Can you hear me in the back?
No.
No?
Microphone.
Microphone, really? Okay. No, seriously, I need to know that. Okay. I have to rely on this crutch, unfortunately. Okay, can people hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Great. So, I want to welcome you to SF Peak Performance. By show of hands, who has been to one of these events before? Okay, well that's like less than half the crowd, so that means that I got a pretty good marketing campaign going on because I got so many new people showing up. Thank you. A little homework, well not homework, a little housekeeping work before we get into the talks. I want to let you know about 2 upcoming events that we're going to be doing. The next event is May 11th. It's going to be at the AWS Loft on Market Street. We had a previous event there, and this event is really special. Very interesting, controversial topic. We are going to have a world-renowned researcher on psychedelics come in and tell us about all the research that he's done on the topic of psychedelics, especially with the use of microdosing. I don't know if you've heard of what microdosing could be, but there are some people, and I don't know who they are, might actually be using these substances to improve their performance at work and in creativity. So this researcher's name is James Fadiman. He'll be joined by Molly Maloof. The 2 of them are both doctors. They'll be explaining what they have learned about using psychedelics. Can't wait for that one.
Will there be samples?
No, there won't be any study materials passed out for that one, unfortunately. Now, the event after that is also a very interesting workshop. It's not going to be a talk, it's an actual workshop. That is Sunday night, May 22nd. What we're doing with that is a breathwork exercise. Now, I know people don't like exercise. Well, actually, maybe peak performance people like exercise. But this is a breathwork exercise where you actually get to lie down. And you get to go through an experience that is able to transform you from the inside out. And I don't really want to say exactly how it works, but you will find out. And you will be very pleased with the results. I've been doing what this is called holotropic breathing for the past 3 months. And it has really changed who I am for the better. So now, with this workshop, I found a practitioner who can bring us to do this breathing exercise. So take a look online, meetup.com/peakperformance, and you can register for both of those events. The psychedelic event is free, but the workshop, there's a cost to it. It's $25. I know we can afford it, but it's well worth the transformation. Now, I'd like to get into thanking some of the people who are here right now. We've got food that is really, really, really tasty from Modern Paleo by 2 Forks. You can find them at get2forks.com. What they do is deliver paleo food to your house if you live in San Francisco. Every week. You get about 4 meals every week. And I'm not going to tell you exactly how they work. I'm going to have Param, one of the managers, come over here and explain what they do after the next presentation. But I also want to thank our wine vendor, who has brought ketogenic wine that does not affect blood sugar. It doesn't have carbs. And stop me if I'm saying this incorrectly. So in fact, you know what? I'm not even going to go any further on that. All I'm going to say is I have been in ketosis for the past couple of days, and I'm shocked that I'm going to have a glass of wine, and I'm still going to be in ketosis. I don't even know how that's possible. But it's really good that I'm able to finally do this. So kudos to you guys for putting that on. I'll have them come up and explain it a little bit later. Right now, I want to welcome our first speaker. Mike Williams is the CEO of, is it David Co. or is it Getting Things Done?
David Allen Company.
David Allen Company, okay.
Yeah.
David Allen Company, and people know this methodology as getting things done. David Allen has written a few books. They have been major bestsellers, and the first time that I read his book was in 2008 when I was running a book rental service, actually. And I was like way in over my head with all my tasks. I could barely get anything done. And in fact, the funny thing is I couldn't even get the book done because as soon as I was reading it, I got motivated to get things done. So I put the book away and I just started on my task list. So, Mike, I want to welcome you to the stage.
All right, thank you so much. So, how many people here have read Getting Things Done? Just a little show of hands. All right, and so about 50% have and 50% have not. So for those of you who read it, did somebody, like a friend, recommend it to you ever? Raise your hand. All right. So that's how GTD came into my world. And so first of all, it's great to be back in San Francisco. I've been in the Bay Area all this week, and I come up here quite often and do a lot of work with a lot of different firms up here. And I was over at Lawrence Livermore, and then I was down in Palo Alto working with some venture capitalists this week, and then I'll be in San Jose tomorrow doing one of our seminars. And San Francisco, I just love this environment. I love what you represent, and I love the vibe that you got going on here. So George, thank you so much for inviting us in. Really appreciate it. So my job today is I'd like to, if you don't know GTD, I'd like to introduce you to it. If you do know GTD, I'd like to remind you about it. And I'm going to, hopefully within the 30 minutes I have, teach you just a taster of how you might get this world of chaos under control so you can surf on top of your work instead of being buried by it. So that's the promise. And actually, the big provocative promise of GTD is once you get it, you no longer have problems in your life, right? And we turn them all into projects and things and desired outcomes for you to pursue. So here's the key premise of getting things done. And this is it. Your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. How many people walking over to this event had something on your mind? Raise your hand. How many people, when you had that something on your mind, that thing has been on your mind for more than one day? Raise your hand. Maybe more than 1 week? Raise your hand. Right, and we're all walking around with all this stuff on our mind, and we're thinking about it, we're thinking about it, we're thinking about it, we're thinking about it, but we're not moving on it. So, after today, we'll explain the cost of that, and we'll explain the benefit of getting that off your mind. So here's why GTD matters. How many people here feel that they're pretty busy? Raise your hand. Overload, perhaps. A lot of things coming at you. Perhaps you have the, particularly here in Silicon Valley where you're entrepreneurs and you're creating, where you've got infinite opportunity, and then how do I tap into that and turn it into something? My career, a little background about myself, and when I found GTD, here's where I was. And here's where I knew I needed something. I was at a dinner with my wife at the time, and it was a beautiful dinner. And she said to me, "Your body's here, but your mind's not. Where are you?" Has that ever happened to anybody? You've been and you're so distracted. So what happened in the course of my career was, kind of in the early part of the career, you get a job, you do a good job at that, and then what happens? You get promoted. And then you do a good job at that, and then what happens? You get promoted. And then maybe along the way, how many of you picked up a life partner of some sort along the way? Raise your hand. And then how many of you perhaps have parents or aging parents? Raise your hand. Life gets more complicated, right? So it was at that point in time where I was coming out of a phase in my career where I could use brute force. I could drink Mountain Dew, I could drink Red Bull, I could drink more coffee, and I could work more hours. But that as a strategy for stress-free productivity is not sustainable. So is there a better way out? And when I read David's book, I came to his book and I read it, I'm like, this guy figured it out. And if you're a systems thinker, you like closed loop systems, you'll like what I'll be talking about today. Because I said, I have to prove this wrong as fast as I can, because if this doesn't work, I need to get on to something else. But it works. David sold over 3 million books worldwide. We've got 20 franchisees representing 60 countries worldwide. And this thing actually kind of grew from the bottom up from San Francisco out to the rest of the world. Why? The book came out in 2001. Blogging was just taking off. Twitter was just taking off. David's got 1.2 million Twitter followers. It's kind of neat. So let's get on with this. So here's the thing. If I were to reach inside your mind, here's what we're working with. We've got all this interesting gray matter. And in the work that I do a lot of teaching, I do a lot of executive coaching. And then when I close the door and I'm coaching people and I say, hey, what's really got your attention? This is what shows up for most people. There's a ton of stuff that we're carrying around on our mind. I shoulda, coulda, woulda, I got this great idea, I need to move on this, the kids are stressing me out, my fiance's stressing me out, my boyfriend's stressing me out, my girlfriend's stressing me out, whatever it is, taxes are due, all this kind of stuff is on our mind. Now, there is a different state that we'd like to get to, and David took this from the martial art analogy, which is mind like water. So picture yourself in front of a nice calm pond, and you throw a pebble into it. What's the pond going to do? Ripple and then go back to what? Calm. And then if you throw a boulder in the pond, what's the boulder going to do? And then it'll go back to calm. Now the key thing here is that the water is always appropriately engaged with whatever's coming at it. It's not spending too much energy, it's not spending too little energy. It just deals with it appropriately. So that's the key takeaway. So how do we create a situation for ourselves where we can just deal appropriately with whatever's coming into our world and not overreact, not underreact? How many people have ever read an email and felt your blood pressure go up? Man, it was just words on a screen. Like if you think about it logically, it's like just words. But something, we charge it with so much stuff. Now, in all those words, there's probably, hey, something I need to extract out of this that is meaningful and move it forward. So what we find is people, in order to get to mind like water, what we need most right now is just a little space to do a little thinking. How many people would like to carve out just a little more space, push a little back every now and then, just to regroup and catch up? Right. So now, imagine if you had the freedom to be creative on demand when you want to be creative, engage in strategic thinking with your personal world and your professional world, and simply be present when you're with friends, when you're with families, when you're at events like this, so you can give your full attention and just be there in the moment. Now, if you're not here in the moment right now, the question would be, what's pulling you out? And I bet there's something on your mind. So if there's something on your mind pulling you out, how do you get back in to the flow? So let's talk about that. So what I'm going to talk about today is something that's really simple yet multifaceted. And what I mean by that, I'm going to share a couple moves with you, and you're going to say, wow, that's interesting, kind of simple, but I guarantee it can handle the whole complexity of your world. So I work from CEOs down to 6-year-olds, and it covers the whole gamut. Anybody here a Howard Stern listener? Howard Stern is one of our big champions talking on the air about how GTD changed his world, rocked his world. So it goes from Howard Stern to the head of the World Bank to CEOs on Wall Street, and to a lot of tech people here in Silicon Valley. So the flow of life's work is what it's all about. So here's how it works, and I have a simple question for you. Pretend you have a meeting tomorrow, and you have something at home, like say a briefcase or something like that, with something really important, and you have to absolutely remember that thing and bring it to the meeting tomorrow. And if you don't, something seriously bad is going to happen. What's your strategy for remembering that thing? Who can share something? How would you remember not to forget it?
Put it by the door.
Oh my goodness. Boom. And for that, we get advanced degrees? Why does that work?
Because it's next to a thing we definitely do.
Right. And you are literally going to either trip over that or bump into that. But more importantly, here's where brain research is starting to show up. You are using your brain in an optimal way when you do that, because your brain is beautiful at recognizing patterns and seeing things in your environment and interpreting them, right? Does that feel true? Now, if you see that in the morning, you haven't had your coffee, you didn't go to Blue Bottle yet, now you're like tripping over your bag, you're like, oh yeah, I got this important meeting, I got to bring this thing. You know, I'm not even as smart as you. I'd put it on the driver's seat of my car and then have to sit on it and then I'd bring it in. So here we're starting to tap into why it works. Recognize how your brain works. Your brain loves to see the stuff that's out, not the stuff that's in. You can't see it if it's still inside. And so this has been actually a topic of a couple different books. The Organized Mind by Daniel Levitin, who's actually here in San Francisco quite a bit, and this other book, Brain Chains, talks about and summarizes the recent brain research that's out there to break the myth of multitasking and actually talk about single threading. I don't know if anybody here read any of Clifford Nass stuff from Stanford. He's a good researcher, recently passed away. But these are really interesting books. I suggest you read them. Read them at your peril, though, because they'll probably be counter to what you're actually doing today. But it's backed by brain research. So how do we find our way out of this stuff? The way out is through. So we have 5 steps. So the getting things done process, the first level that we would talk about, we have 3 levels. The first level is what we call the foundational level. We call it fundamentals. So it's how you get back to day-to-day stability. So there are 5 steps, simple and multifaceted. And if you have something to write with, or I would suggest you pull it out, because I'm going to give you a 1-minute test to see if some of this stuff works in your world. So here are the 5 steps. And these are the 5 steps you go through to get almost anything in your world under control, including your kitchen. So the first step is capture what has your attention. So you mentioned you're walking around, you have something on your mind. Now that's not very strategic to keep it on your mind. So get it out of your mind, capture what has your attention. 2, then pick that thing up and ask yourself, what is it and what do I want to do with this thing that's on my mind? Is it a bike I want to buy? Is it a business I want to start? Well, what do I want to do with it? And is this thing actionable, yes or no? So you clarify what it means to you. So after you clarify it, then you organize it into a system where you can see your reminders. Going back to the bag in front of the door, you're just putting it in buckets. Your brain loves buckets. How many people here have a calendar? Raise your hand. How many people think about your calendar as a tool and it's on your mind all the time? Okay. Actually, you probably trust your calendar. So you don't overthink your calendar. It's a trusted system in your world. You've absorbed it into your nervous system. Now imagine if you just had a couple other buckets that could really add value. So we're going to show you what you can organize into. Then you organize into these buckets. You're actually creating maps for yourself that you can reflect against, kind of keep in tune with your life so that you can appropriately engage and go out and do the most important and appropriate action for you to engage in. So 5 steps: capture, clarify, organize, reflect, and engage. And there will be a quiz at the end of this, so you better study and take notes on this. So let's go on the first one. So capture what has your attention. That's the first step. And if I were to come in and sit shoulder to shoulder with you and you were to hire me as an executive coach, the first thing I would ask you is, what's got your attention? So now, I'm going to invite you to do the first task that I would do with the CEO, which is for 1 minute straight, I'd like you to take whatever device you have or a piece of paper and write down everything that's currently on your mind. If I were coaching you and you were a CEO, I would sit shoulder to shoulder with you for about 4 hours to get it all out of your mind. That's how much stuff you have. So go ahead, take 1 minute, write everything down that has your attention.
By currently, you mean like last 5 minutes or last?
Anything that's on your mind right now, wherever your current reality is for you. It'll come out like this. It'll be like dog food. Oh, doggone it, I forgot that report today. Oh, that report today reminds me of Jim. And Jim, oh shoot, I forgot to do this. So it'll come out funky. Just short, don't organize it, just get it all out.
If I have it all written down in a to-do list, does it count like on my...
Nope, you gotta do it again. Ready? So I'm gonna time you. We're actually gonna take a minute. So let's see here. On your mark, get set, go. See how many things you can capture in 1 minute. What's got your attention? All right, come on back. So, anybody have anything on their mind? Anybody capture anything? Nobody was totally empty, right? How many things did you capture? Just curious, count them up. 1 minute worth of 5. 6. 8. Yep. I usually do this, and when we do our course, we do our first one for just 7 minutes. Usually people get anywhere from 18 to 45 items out. Very strategic move to get it out of your mind. However, if you found yourself here with the inability to actually capture, we would say that's an opportunity in your system. Because if you're walking around with thoughts, as brilliant as that thought is, by the time you walk here back to your home, there's how many people have had the most brilliant thought and by the time you got back home you forgot it? Right. Now, we can fix that. You fix that if you have something on you that we call a ubiquitous capture tool. So now, most of us are carrying technology with us. You know, I go old school and I have this wallet that's got a note taker pad in it, so if I have an idea, boom, this is coming out, I write it down and put it back, and I'm trying to walk through the world with mind like water. So if I feel a disturbance, I'm like, what is that? And it's got to be more than just the bird chirping. It's got to be like, wow, I got a little idea, or something's yanking my chain that I need to do something about. So you have to be able to capture that in order to do it. So this is the beginning of the workflow funnel for getting things done. Capture what has your attention. So the best practice here, or the worst practice actually, is keeping stuff in your head. The best practice is having the tools and the technology to get it out of your head and put it into some kind of gathering spot. So an inbox, or text yourself, or somewhere where you can process it. So that's step number one. If you find yourself saying, oh, that fell through the cracks, that is a hole in your capture process. Because you could have just captured it, and if you had a system, you just capture it and put it in a bucket and let the system take care of it. So this is dojo number one that we're exiting, capture. All right, let's go into dojo number two. Now that I have this thing that I captured, whatever's on your list right now, if I were coaching you, what I would ask is, what's it mean to you? What is this thing? And we'll bring it through a very simple process. And we'll ask these questions. I'll ask you these questions. Look at one of the items on your list. Does anybody want to volunteer one of their items? Come on, you want volunteer. What's one thing on your list?
I have to do my laundry.
Laundry, okay. So what is it? So I would start here. What is it? Is this something you want to take action on?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. If yes, it would go on this track. Is it something you can do in under 2 minutes?
No.
No. Is it something you can delegate to somebody else?
No.
No. All right, you got to defer it and take care of it on your own when you have time and you're back at home where you can do laundry, right? Unless you have to go out and do it.
Yeah.
So that would be one example. Does anybody have another example?
I have an app idea.
You have an app idea. Okay, what is that? I have an app idea. Is it something you want to take action on? Yeah? And so yes, if this were the only thing in your world right now to do, no, if it were, what would be the very next action you take to work on this idea?
Do it.
What does doing look like?
I'll probably prototype it.
You prototype, how would you do that?
Just set the code or.
So you code.
Yeah.
You would sit down and code. Can you do that coding in 2 minutes?
Nope.
Can you delegate it to somebody else?
No.
So you would need to get your butt in a seat in front of a computer and just code. So that's what we call the very next physical, visible next action. Most people that we work with are not moving stuff forward because they haven't said, that's exactly what I need to do. I need to get my butt in the chair and code to move that idea forward. Now, is that idea done if you just code it? Or is there a larger desired outcome that you're trying to get to?
Yeah, it's probably going to lead to something larger.
Would it be what would done look like in your world? Prototyping done, or looking to prototype, or prototyping completed?
Yeah. I mean, prototyping part would be done.
Okay, so if that were me in my system, you'll see soon that we have a list called a project list, where the project is what done looks like, and the next action is what doing looks like. So done looks like the prototype is done, doing is the next step I need to code. So let's go on. So actually, when I read David's book and I looked at this workflow map for the first time, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This thing is gonna hold the complexity of my life? Yes. If you notice, everything here, if you master these questions, this is the transformation in your life where you no longer have problems, you'll only have projects. What is a problem? I'm sitting here and I'd like to be in this other state. Oh, that's your desired outcome. What's the next action you need to do to move towards that? So this is the clarify step, and this is the thinking process. Now that we nailed that, you got a project and you got an action, we have to do something with it. So here's an example. So most of you on your mind sweep list have a to-do list that looks something like that. Mom, bank, doctor, ad campaign. But once you put it through the clarify process, here's what it starts to look like. Oh, why was mom on my mind? I need to give her a birthday party. Oh, by the way, Mother's Day is coming up. So if you didn't capture that, Mother's Day is coming up. There you go. I earned my keep just by saying that. Then two, what are you going to do about mom and her birthday party? Well, I need to call Ann regarding mom's birthday party. So that's the action that would move mom and birthday party forward. And most people that we work with at the beginning, they have this list of mishmash stuff that hasn't been clarified yet. So that was part of the brilliance of David's work, is the clarify process. So here's another thing on this list, which was ad campaign. Well, what about the ad campaign? I need to launch it. That's what done looks like. All right, what do you need to do to launch it? I need to email Jim to set up a meeting about the ad campaign. So really interesting. The two main notes of GTD are, what's the desired outcome, what does done look like, and what's the next action, what does doing look like? If you get the next action, you get momentum. Most of the time people haven't landed on that. And then if you have a next action that you can just do in under 2 minutes, we have the 2-minute rule, just do it, because it'll take you more time to track it, stack it, and revisit it than just do it. So that's what we call the 2-minute rule. So many people get so much benefit just out of that. All right, so clarify. The worst practice is, deciding when it blows up. The heat's on you, and you just waited so long, it's going to blow up, so you have to act. The best practice is decide when it shows up. How am I doing my time? 12 minutes, okay. Cool. So then, after you get done the clarified thinking process, here's where you organize it, and here's what we recommend. Organize is simply this: where the thing is matches what it means to you. So let's do a really simple example. If I pull out your drawer of silverware, you probably have spoons, knives, and forks, right? And they might be organized. Now, if they're all like together, some of you may have that, but if they're organized, that is simply this: the meaning matches the location. And if that fork sneaks over to the spoon place, you're like, no, that doesn't match. You got to put that back over, because your brain likes that kind of thing. It recognizes patterns. So in our world, on the actionable yes side that we just talked about, there are 4 buckets. And once I got these 4 buckets in place in my life, man, it could handle everything. I got a project list, which is a list of all my desired outcomes, things I need to complete. Then you store on your calendar time-specific actions that you need to take care of, such as meetings and appointments, those kinds of things. And if it's not a time-specific action, then it goes on your next actions list. And when you look at your next actions list, that is a list of just doing. So we call that the physical, visible next action. So everything starts with a concrete verb, like I need to buy, I need to draft, I need to email, I need to schedule. Does that sound like your life? Those 4 verbs probably handle 80% of my life. And then a key strategic bucket that I learned about when I did this methodology is, I sent that email out. Now I'm waiting for something to come back. How many people are in a job where you're dependent on other people doing stuff? How many people have a waiting for list? It's a strategic list. If you don't have one, get a waiting for list. And what you put on it is, I'm waiting for John, date stamp it, regarding such and such. And then every couple days, look at that waiting for list, and if he hasn't gotten back to you or she hasn't gotten back to you, then you can go back out and ping that person, because it's important for your workflow to get that answer so you can move that thing forward. So when you're in a matrix, project environment, a waiting for list is critical. You might be waiting for customers to get back to you. You might be waiting for your boss to get back to you. So it's not just for your colleagues, but it goes up, down, sideways, and below. So projects, calendar, next actions, waiting for. If you're a manager, a waiting for list is a very powerful list as well. I'm waiting for this project to come back as complete, so on and so forth. So on the non-actionable side, there are basically just 3 buckets. So if you pick something up or you find something in your world that's non-actionable, the first question we ask, is it trash? If I were to coach you shoulder to shoulder, probably 50% of your world right now is trash, and I can help you lighten your load. How many people moved out to San Francisco? How many people have a box you haven't even opened since you moved out to San Francisco? How many people have moved out to San Francisco and back to California, you still have a box you haven't opened? Me! I have one in my garage and I practice this stuff. All right, so then the second bucket is reference. So notice that reference is on the no side as far as actionable. So this is just pure reference. Your tax returns, your will, any pictures that you take for inspiration, or anything that's just reference. So in my system, Evernote's just a beautiful, just dumping ground for reference. So all my non-actionable stuff goes largely into Evernote or Dropbox. And then there's a beautiful list that we call the someday maybe list. So where are you capturing and collecting all those crazy ideas? I bet you there's 2 more ideas behind the one idea that you're talking about, but you don't have the time and energy to move on it. You got that idea when you were walking your dog in the park, you captured it. Now if you put it through the system, it'll end up on a someday maybe list. And your commitment to that list is taking no action on it other than reviewing it like once a month or something, some kind of frequency that makes sense to you. Like you could have something on that list like, I want to learn how to tango. And I want to do it in Argentina and Buenos Aires where they know how to tango. Now, that's where you capture all these wild ideas. And what I see when I work with folks is they forgot how to dream. They don't have a place to catch their dreams. Someday Maybe List is perfect for that. Absolutely perfect. So organize. Worst practice, stacks, blended stacks on your desk. Notes in your computer that haven't been extracted and the meeting hasn't been extracted. Post-it notes all over the place where things need to be done, but then all of a sudden you lose sight of what needs to be done. The best practice is funnel this stuff into clear, actionable categories or non-actionable categories that we presented, and that's that. So why do you do that? Now, on this way, we created clear buckets, and now you have projects, actions waiting for in your calendar. Beautiful starting set. Now, once a week, you can take those buckets and reflect against those. Those become your strategic maps. And as knowledge workers, right now as you sit here, you probably have 30 to 60 projects in your life, and you probably have 60 to about 150 next actions. The question is, can you see them all? Or are you trying to carry them all up here? Now, it takes courage to want to see it all. And you can lay it out and you can see it, you can start to recognize patterns, and this is where your brain comes back in and starts to see patterns. And once you get clear and current on whatever's got your attention now, there's something waiting to be discovered. But what we find is you're so full right now, if the next great idea came, you might not have the room to even see it. So this thing that we talk about, the weekly review, helps you get a higher perspective, and then it basically has 3 steps. The first one is get clear. So then mind sweep that we did is part of it, just a couple times a week, at least once a week, dump what's got your mind. 2, get current is basically going through those organized buckets that we had, those actions lists, the project list, next actions list, calendar, and the waiting for. Just touch them once a week, clean them up, keep them fresh. And then 3, as you do that week over week over week, you're going to get a more strategic view of your life. You're going to be able to renegotiate commitments that you made. Because a lot of us, whatever we wrote down on our mind sweep list, if you went at that for about an hour, as you end that session, you'll feel a little grief and you'll feel a little relief. The grief is coming from commitments that you made to yourself or others that you're not keeping. The relief is, oh, I can see it now. Now that I can see it, I can do something with it. So the weekly review just is a martial art practice that'll keep you on top of your world. If you do nothing but this from this evening, find some space where you can push the world back, find a special place for you to do a weekly review, that would be the one wish I'd bestow on everybody here, because it'll pull through everything else. So the worst practice here is reacting to the latest and loudest. So one of the things that we see is those who practice GTD no longer snack on their emails and their instant messages. What they're doing is they're working off their project list, their next actions list, their waiting for list, their calendars are their strategic way to engage with their world. And then, oh yeah, sometimes undefined work's going to come in, but that's not where they're living. They're living in the work that they've clarified and determined is strategic. So that's how that works. And then last, you engage. So now that you've captured, clarified, organized, reflected against all your commitments, now when I come knocking on your door and say, hey, you want to go out for a beer? You can say, you know what? I just did my weekly review. I got this really important thing that's coming up. So I'll have to renegotiate and do that beer another day. Or you say, hey, I just did my weekly review. I'm pretty caught up. The magic of the list is not to be type A, anal. The magic of the list is knowing your commitments, so you can say, yeah, that's all taken care of, and when I come back to it, it'll be okay. Let's go out and have a beer. And the best thing is, when you go out and have that beer, it's guilt-free. You're free to be present with your friend when you're having that beer. So engage is simply choosing what to do from those great lists that you've created. That's an outcome of reviewing them. And then boom. Worst practice, you're stuck in the busy trap, living off the latest and loudest in your world. Best practice is you're making a trusted choice based on your system. So, here are the 5 steps. What are the 5 steps? What's the first one?
Capture.
What's the second one?
Clarify.
What's the third one?
Organize.
What's the fourth one?
Reflect.
What's the fifth one?
Engage.
Give your partner next to you a high five. Boom! That was awesome. All right. Now, were those simple enough? Those simple yet multifaceted? So that will help take this and calm it down. And so you don't have all those thoughts running around. You're not waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning grinding your teeth. You know, if you did not put that bag in front of the door, what's going to happen when you try to go sleep at night? You're going to be thinking about that bag all night. I gotta remember the bag, I gotta remember the bag, I gotta remember the bag. Now, if you use your brain the way your brain likes to be used, just park an external reminder into a trusted system that you'll bump into, really good things will show up. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much. Question? Yep.
So I'm a big fan of GTD. I think it's awesome. So
Thank you.
good thing.
Yeah.
But
Me too.
One of the things wrong with is separating personal versus work.
Yes.
And so this whole thing is centered around contextual tasks. Like things I'm going to do from my computer, things I'm going to do when I'm at home,
Yeah, contextual actions.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
actions, tasks.
Yeah. The same.
Right. But I don't mix all the stuff I'm supposed to do with work with the stuff I do at home.
Yeah. So there's two things that we see, and it depends on the nature of your work too. So the first bifurcation that we see is usually on the project list. So I want to separate my home projects, my personal projects, and my professional projects. Now, as you work on a personal project and as you work on a professional project, some of them may require phone calls, as an example. So you could move, say, 10 projects from your personal and professional if you drove through, your phone call list. You may or may not want to separate your phone calls into personal or professional. We recommend not as a starting point. But you will have some contexts that are certainly more on the personal side, like things I can do at home, errands I need to run. I have one context that I created on my list called Before I Walk Through the Door. So how I use that is I'm commuting, pull into the garage, and then the door's right there, my family's on the other side, and I want to pull up my list and see, ooh, Conrad had a test today, how'd that go? Oh, Hannah had a presentation, how'd that go? My wife had a good day or bad day. I don't know, am I coming in with high fives or hugs? That list, before I walk through the door, helps me to be more intelligent and engage with my family. So you can be creative with those lists as well.
Yeah, but the point wasn't so much about separating them on this category versus that category,
Yeah.
subcategorizing.
Yeah.
It's actually the media that you use to store those.
Yeah, and if I were coaching you, I'd simply ask, what would work best for you? I had a colleague at GTD that used to keep everything in Outlook, and then when he left at the day, he grabbed his paper planner, which was his whole personal system, so he actually had 2 GTD systems. Now, if I were coaching you, we'd work on what feels right to you. How do you want to separate it? Do you want 2 different apps? Do you want to use one app for personal, one app for professional? Yeah. Yes?
Good follow-up question. So I started with Notebook, then Remember the Milk, then Things,
Yeah.
and a couple others, and now I'm in Trello world, right?
Yeah.
Do context and everything. What's your favorite tool?
I use OmniFocus. And actually, regarding tools, what I learned was just select one and date it for a while. Because it's not tool hopping that will solve the problem. It is following the thinking pattern. Because what I showed you today is meta. It'll fit on top of birch bark. So you can use it on whatever tool. But that's what I'd recommend. But why do I like Omni? Because I can use it on my Mac. It goes cross-platform. It's fast. It follows the GTD. It hooks the projects and next actions together. It just rocks. They did a nice job. Okay.
How much time of your day and of your week do you spend managing your lists?
Typically, managing my list, it takes about 3 cycles of 15 minutes to just process and keep current during the day, so that's about 45 minutes. And then managing the list, that's adding stuff to the list, and then I work off the list, and that's the work time, so that can vary depending on what the action is. And then my weekly reviewing the list and keeping them current, that takes 90 minutes a week. And if you, for me, let's pretend we work a 40-hour week, that's only 3.75% of your week. It's a very high leverage moment. You did a Pareto chart on it, that 90 minutes makes me a whole lot, better, stress-free, and appropriately engaged in my world.
I tend to underestimate the amount of time the task will take, like every time. Is there
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any trick I can do with my mind to adjust that?
So the question was, I tend to underestimate the time it'll take me to do the task. One thing you could do is when you do a task, maybe just do cycles, like have a standard cycle that you want to spend on something. I work in 15-minute increments, so I'm like, hey, when I do a task, how many 15-minute increment cycles is it going to take me? Boom, boom, boom. And I try to gauge it that way. But depending on the nature of your work and depending on the task, you just do it until you're done. Now, the thing about the GTD system, let's say you're doing your task, you're not done yet, and your buddy calls you and says, hey, you want to go out to get a beer? And you say, yes. Now, the next action, as you leave that task, is to make sure it's anchored back on your actions list, so when you're ready to pick up that project again, you know exactly where you left off.
So
Yeah.
the nature of my work is a CEO, so
Yeah.
I have too much of different contexts, and the problem is that I never get to some of them because of the tasks that are.
Yeah, if you're a CEO, then the very strategic list you're going to be working from is your project list, certainly first, to make sure when you're prioritizing and you look at each desired outcome on your project list, what's the value of doing this, what's the risk of not? What's the value of doing this, what's the risk of not? And then once you get that nailed, what's the next action to move that thing forward?
And in this way, I never get to some lists at all.
That's okay. I mean, you're not doing stuff right now, so that you could be doing. That's still just the way life works. But now when you pivot out of here and you have an opportunity to do something, what's the most strategic choice you can make next? And if you got a clear next action defined, and you do your weekly reviews, you'll be working on the most strategic thing more often. So it's a probability game, really.
Thank you.
Yes.
When you've been coaching executives, how many have used the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and how do you integrate that into the system?
Yeah, good question. So how many people have used the 7 Habits system, and how do you integrate it into this one? This is exactly where I ran into David's work, because in the 90s I did all of Stephen Covey's stuff, and it helped me with my purpose, my mission, my vision, and what was crumbling was all the emails and the stuff what we call on the runway. So it works very well. Actually, David Covey is a business partner of ours, and he helped us franchise internationally. And what he said, which I thought was brilliant, and what I experienced was, if you want to implement 7 habits, the best way to do it is using getting things done. Because it'll help you elevate up into those wonderful habits that Dr. Stephen Covey mentioned. But what's holding people back typically is, man, that paper on your desk, that unread email, that stuff on your mind, which David's system holds really well. So CEOs have come through that. This helps them manage that. And I need to go. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mike, thanks for that very engaging conversation that you had with us. I have more questions for you, but I'll have to wait. So you guys have 3 minutes to get up and get some more wine or some more food or drinks and come back to your seats for the next set of presentations. What's next? Okay, so we have Corey Breyer, who has he has a really interesting book that he's written because he interviewed 50 entrepreneurs who are very successful at what they do. He wanted to break down their day, their habits. So what he'll be doing up here on stage is telling you about what he's learned from all the different successful entrepreneurs that he's interviewed. People like Tim Ferriss and Derek Sievers from CD Baby, and there are a few others. So the guy's got 3 minutes. Thanks.